Hey everyone, it's again Product Tank time. So warm welcome from all of us. So my name is Nicholas. I'm guiding us through that evening, and we have Alide with us. So maybe say hello. Thomas, and already Jeff with us who will talk to us this evening. So warm welcome from the three of us, and of course, a warm welcome from the ProductTank Karlsruhe community.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Great to have you, and we are really looking forward to today's talk. So to a little bit bridge the time until more people are joining us. We currently have 8 people joining us in the stream. Head over to Menti with your mobile phone, with your browser, tablet, whatever you got around you. Take the meeting ID 745543. We will again use Menti for later. And we will, of course, use that now to bridge the time a little bit. And we want to know a bit more about you joining us. So first of all, tell us where you are located. So I heard from Jeff that he is located in Barcelona. So that should be, of course, stated there. So let's wait a bit more. We have Nuremberg, Stuttgart. We have the meeting ID or one meeting ID. So thanks for sharing again on that slide. Karlsruhe, of course. Hopefully the biggest city name on that tech cloud. So let's wait a bit more. Yeah, of course, Barcelona, thanks. So we have 14 people. For those of us who joined recently, head over to Menti, take the meeting ID, put it in there, 745543. Tell us where you are located so that we know a bit more about you, and we can, of course, pull that out later on again. And how are you guys doing, Alide, Thomas, and Jeff? Busy day?
Me, I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. It's been a good day, productive day. Even got my exercise in, and settling in for an afternoon and evening of calls, etc.
Yeah, so you had the chance to enjoy the nice weather down there.
Sure, absolutely. I try to enjoy it every day. I spend too much time in here in front of the camera, so try to come outside as much as possible. There's a message in the comments that says that some folks haven't found the YouTube link.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just resend the email on mindtheproduct.com. Probably was lost.
Yeah, would be great.
Yeah, I can do that. I just put it on Twitter as well, but I guess that's not everybody. Germany is still not so much on Twitter. I don't know. They're all missing out on product Twitter. But let's see. Yeah, I'll do a quick push. You guys can continue with the small talk.
Perfect. Thanks. And thanks, Anna, for informing us. We will fix that, and maybe we can put that also in the description of the meetup and on mindtheproduct.com. Yeah, Alide, busy day.
Well, actually, I'm on my holiday right now. So I think this is the busy meeting for today. And it's the first time actually I have a calming day before meetup, so everything's fine.
Yeah.
But guys, have you mentioned that Jeff's background is totally fitting to our logo?
Oh yeah, the color is perfect. Yeah.
Perfect. Yes.
It's ProductTank blue.
It is. So I think I was wearing a blue shirt one of the past times, but I skipped that one this time. And yeah, we have more people joining Hamburg. We had Amsterdam, Pforzheim, Nürnberg, Karlsruhe. We had more people joining, and I would say let's pull that out later on, or let's maybe move to the next question. Tell us what you do. So a little bit of background for us, what your profession looks like, so that we know whether we have consultants like 100% this time, or whether we have also UX and UI specialists and somebody on the product management side. So quite interesting. I think we had a peak on the product management side in the past. So far, nobody with a development background. But yeah, let's wait another minute, and then we're gonna jump into today's agenda, the slides, and then of course Jeff's talk with the Q&A session at the end. Yeah, this time a bit more UX and UI specialists, or product management is also pretty much aligned. So great. So we have a strong focus again on the product management and the UX UI specialist side. Personally, I think I'm somewhere in between. Alide, where do you see yourself? More on the UX side, more on the product side, somewhere in between?
Well, I pushed the UX button, but I was really like, okay, what am I? Product, consultant? I don't know. So
Perfect.
it would be nice to be able to push everything. So
yeah. Jeff, where do you see yourself?
So I put down consultant these days because I do a lot of this stuff, a lot of all this kind of stuff. So I put down consultant in this case.
Perfect. Thomas, more on the product management side, I would say, or somewhere in between a couple of roles?
No, definitely product manager. I'm pretty happy with that.
Perfect. Great. Thanks. We have somebody with a development background, so I'm not alone here. Perfect. Thanks for joining. And let's move on with the slides again. Join us on menti.com 745543. We're going to use that later on also for the Q&A session. And yeah, that is us, your ProductTank organizers. We are, the three of us is around today. So we have Alide, Thomas, and myself together with Jeff today. Feel free to ping us on LinkedIn or follow us on Twitter. I'm not yet that busy there, so maybe I should think about that. And the agenda for today. So we will walk through a couple of slides, as you know, like the last times, and then of course we are really looking forward to Jeff's talk, and then we have roughly 40 to 45 minutes listening to what he has to share with us, and then we have a Q&A session at the end. Again, we collect the questions via Menti. You can raise questions, you can vote for questions for those of you who joined us the past times. Same procedure. So ProductTank, we are part of Mind the Product. I would say the best product content out there. So feel free to head over to Mind the Product, not now, after the talk, of course, and register. Look into the product tanks there. Of course, the ProductTank Karlsruhe is also represented there. And we are part of roughly 200,000 people worldwide across 200 cities. So the community there is growing like crazy. Of course, our Karlsruhe community is growing and growing. And yeah, it makes a lot of fun to be part of that. And yeah, saying that again, head over after the talk tomorrow whenever you have time. Check out the blog posts there, the offerings there, the trainings, conferences, and maybe what is offered in your city if you're joining us from some other city or from abroad. So how does it work for those of you who are not familiar with ProductTank? ProductTank is run by product people for product people. So we, the ProductTank Karlsruhe, we try to set up a meeting roughly every 4 to 6 weeks with 1 to 2 speakers. And of course, with a strong focus on networking over drinks and food. Nowadays, we have to do it remote because of the Corona situation, but hopefully we will see changes in weeks, hopefully not months ahead, to meet in person, to discuss, to really have good discussions, and to share, learn, and network, and of course, to have fun. So if you want to join us, there is also a Slack channel, mindtheproduct.slack.com. If you have questions or want to discuss topics, join us there. Check out the other ProductTank meetups in Frankfurt, Stuttgart, Düsseldorf, Hamburg, really big community, Munich, Zurich, and so forth. And with the conferences, check out mindtheproduct.com. So there is maybe some changes due to the Corona situation, so you get the updates over there. And for those of you who haven't joined us yet on mindtheproduct.com, so we will move over from Meetup to our own platform and register there. It is also free. The registration is quite quick. So, and you will get all the updates and new ProductTank meetups there. So, yeah, I would say nothing more to add. We have Jeff speaking to us about Sense and Respond, continuously learning our way to better outcomes. I mean, what should I say, Jeff? The author of Lean UX, well known for that. Also well known now for your newest book, Forever Employable. I still have, I think, 10 or 15 minutes open on the audiobook. Well recommended, so good to read, and it's a bit for myself like looking into a mirror. And yeah, the way I had the mail conversations with you, very open-minded, very humble, and yeah, really looking forward to your presentation now and having you speaking to ProductTank Karlsruhe. So the stage is yours.
Excellent, thank you. And I don't know if you can see, there's an occasional cat tail coming up behind me. That's my cat has decided to hang out with us this evening as well. So we're very fortunate that he's here. You can kind of see him in the background, and all he really wants to do is sit in my lap, and that's not going to happen. So he may get a little aggressive like he's doing right now. Stay over there, buddy. Okay, I'm gonna have to kick you out. Okay, stay over there. Okay. Hey, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm going to share my screen with you and give you and then share some slides and give you a sense of what that looks like. I think it's going to be this screen here. Yes, it is. So I'm going to do that. Excellent. Yep, there he goes. And let me get my slides going. All right, excellent. So we're going to talk about Sense and Respond this evening, and we're going to talk about outcomes, and we're going to talk about why it's important to manage the outcomes consciously, to make explicit decisions about what we're doing and why we're doing it, because if we let those ideas drift, even if we're managing the outcomes, we could actually end up in situations where we cause some unintended negative consequences in many cases. And in some cases, you could argue they're intended, but let's go and we'll go through that process itself. Sorry, I think maybe he wants to get out, which would solve everything. Give me just 1 second. Here. Do you want to go? You want to go right now? Go. Go. Bye. All right. Good. He left. Lots of less distraction. Sorry about that. Working from home, right? This is the fun part. My kids are grown up. They typically speak like grown up. They're teenagers. Typically, they don't walk in the room. They know when I'm doing stuff like this. But the cat, he doesn't know. So, look. Once upon a time, this is how we made software, and this is how we delivered software. And in fact, I worked on the software that came on these CDs. And this was the nature of software development 20 years ago. And in that world, learning loops were long. It took a long time to learn whether we delivered something of value. Software adoption was slow. It took time to get software out to people, to get them to install it, to get them to use it. Real impact with software and technology was limited. And it was limited to tech-savvy people, people who could afford a computer, people who were tuned into this new way of working and playing, spending time, etc. When we built software that went out on CDs, works as designed was the goal. That's what we were targeting. So you could say that software has eaten the world. It's already happened. And there's technology literally in everything, right? Obviously, our phones are technology-based. Our coffee machines have software inside them. And pretty much everything's being connected to the internet these days, like this salt shaker here, right? This is the world's first connected salt shaker, in case you needed that, right? Technology has consumed the world. And what's fascinating is that the way that we make technology, the way that we make software has fundamentally changed in the last decade, and certainly very significantly in the last 5 years, with the kind of the connecting of dev and ops together into DevOps to help support a continuous software development process, right? We've got software is now continuous. When I was making it on CDs 20 years ago, it was not continuous. And so today, software is, we deploy software on an ongoing basis as frequently as we want. And organizations are getting that. They're understanding that this is what's happening. This is BBVA. BBVA is a big Spanish bank, and they are doing a lot of interesting work with technology. But the key quote here, this is from the group executive chairman, the top guy in the organization, and he said, look, we are competing in a race that has no finish line or predetermined route. Now, this is a massive admission by a leader from a traditional organization, because traditionally, you could see, they would say it's a very linear process. This is the race that we're in, and if we get here, we win, and that's the end. But because we live in this, because software has eaten the world, software drives business, and software is now continuous, the race that organizations are in, that companies are in against each other, doesn't have a finish line, because we are in circles, right? Circles don't have finish lines. We're building continuous systems. And there's no direct route to get anywhere, because as we go through these cycles of improvement and learning, we adjust course based on what we're actually doing. Now, it wasn't always that way, right? It wasn't always the way that we delivered value. There was, the majority of companies still take this mental model for the way that they deliver products and services. The model of it's called the model year, right? And the automotive industry gave us this concept, and it's the only way that you can get your car to do new things, right? If you bought a car in 2019 or 2020, the only way that car is going to do new things is if you buy the 2021 model. This is a deliberate strategy on the part of the automotive industry. There's no reason for this, This was a marketing gimmick that was invented by Alfred Sloan at General Motors 100 years ago to get you to buy a new car every year. And initially, since it feels like such a natural model because we've had it so long, we applied that model to software, right? We literally put the model year on our software. We had Windows 95 and Windows 98 and Windows 2000. And then all of a sudden we saw disruption, right? Disruption. Software-minded people started building cars. And then all of a sudden, the car could do new things, not by buying next year's model, but by getting a software update overnight. So you wake up and the car can drive itself. The car can park itself. The car can simply do new things like it could never do before. And it's not just the car that can do new things because we can continuously update the software in the car. It's the system, the support system for the car that also gets improved very, very, very quickly, like technology. In the story here in the middle, you have a gentleman named Loic who tweets at Elon Musk, and he says, look, every time I go to the supercharger in San Mateo, California, it's always full with people, he uses a different word, with people who leave their Tesla for hours, even if it's already charged, and they've walked away. Elon Musk is sensing at a high level customer feedback, right? Very few CEOs do this. And he responds with a tweet within an hour, and he says, you're right, this is an issue, I'm on it, we're gonna take action. 6 days later, Tesla updates the way that the supercharger network operates. Every minute that you stay connected to a charger after your car is full costs you money. Now they're able to update that because in 6 days because they think like a software company. They build their products and their services like a software company. They're built to take advantage of the continuous nature of software. There's no way in the world that a BMW or a Mercedes, right, or a General Motors or Ford or whatever could ever react to customer feedback in 6 days and change the entire system, because they don't think like a software company. They think like a car company. And it's amazing what these things can do. This is my friend Adam. He owns a Tesla, and he will occasionally send me these screenshots from the app, because the car, of course, has an app, right? He says, look, I got a 5% power increase overnight. The car got faster overnight. He didn't have to do anything, right? He didn't have to buy the next year's model to get a faster car. That's amazing, right? That's absolutely amazing. And it's revolutionizing the industry, and certainly Tesla's reaping a lot of those benefits. Now, this continuous capability, this ability to get ideas out into the market quickly and then learn from that and optimize, gives us tremendous opportunity, because what it allows us to do is build a continuous conversation with the market, with the people that we serve. We have the capability today to ship ideas into market quickly, small things, smallest ideas that we can. We have the capability to then sense how it impacts customer behavior, that thing that we shipped. And then we have the responsibility to ask the question, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to respond to what we just sensed? Now, this is a feedback loop. Now, you remember the beginning of the conversation, I showed you the feedback loop. At AOL, that feedback loop took us, 6 to 12 months. Today, we have the opportunity to get through this feedback loop as quickly as possible. Amazon pushes code to production approximately once every second, 60 times a minute, right? Every time we push something out, we ship, sense, and we respond, we learn whether or not that thing had value, whether it positively impacted customer behavior. The faster that we can learn whether or not we've impacted customer behavior, the faster we can course correct. So if we ship something and it negatively impacts the customer, we can stop doing that, we can roll it back. If it impacts customer behavior positively, Well, we can scale it, we can optimize it, we can roll it to more people. The faster we learn that it's a bad idea, the less we spend on it, the less it hurts to change course. And this is agility. This is where Agile comes from, where being Agile comes from. It comes from learning quickly whether we delivered value and then changing course based on those learnings. And so we have to redefine how we think about product development, right? We can't operate as a software factory anymore because the measure of success is not the delivery of features. We could deliver features. Like I said, Amazon delivers features to market once a second, right? That doesn't mean that they have value, right? The only thing that we're generating, right, when we deliver more code is not more value necessarily. The only thing I can guarantee you that you'll deliver with more code is more code. That's it. That's the only thing you're guaranteed. And so we have to change our measures of success, right? The shipping of features is no longer the measure of success, because if we're just pushing features out there, we start to build products that look like this, right? Just because you can build it doesn't mean that you should build it, right? You end up with a product with lots of features that really no one's ever going to use ultimately. So the measure of success that we should focus on is outcomes, not output, but outcomes, measurable changes in user behavior. That's how we know we've delivered value. That's what they tell us, because we can see customers behaving differently, and hopefully in a positive way. That tells us we've delivered something of value. That tells us when we're done, right? And this comes from truly understanding your customer and understanding what they're trying to achieve, right? Because if you're just shipping features out there and you don't understand your customer, you're never going to change their outcomes. One of the case studies that I've been sharing for a little while is about Gibson guitars. Sadly, Gibson filed for bankruptcy, which is very, very sad. They've been around for 100 years. And so as they noticed that guitar buying trends were dipping, they hired a new CEO to try to save the company. And this CEO was focused on innovation, strictly for innovation's sake. He was obsessed with innovation, new gadgets, new features, new tech, new ways of working, without really focusing on what was actually happening with the buyers of new guitars. Now, it turns out that the buyers of new guitars, the mix of who was buying guitars was changing fundamentally. New guitar buyers were increasingly becoming women. In fact, 50% of new guitar buyers were women, and they were not interested in these new gadgets and these new tools as much, and they were not interested in the way that Gibson was speaking to the market, because this is Gibson's homepage, right? They were targeting the people who worship these guitar gods, and that's not who their target audience was anymore because of the fundamental shift. So Gibson's out of business because they're focusing strictly on delivering features. Fender, a company that makes a very similar product, and I don't want to start a religious war about, Gibson versus Fender, but they both make guitars, right? Fender is doing really well because Fender understands their customer. They went out there, they understood what their customers were trying to achieve, what kind of customer behavior dictated success, and they are building products and online services and marketing messages that meet the needs of those new guitar buyers. And they're thriving. The positive impact is the change in behavior. They're buying guitars, they're buying online lessons, they're subscribing to services. Fender's doing well, Gibson's out of business, right? Here's the challenge, though, when it comes to outcomes, right? Outcomes are customer behavior. The problem is that we can't predict behavior. We think, just like the Gibson CEO, that we know exactly what users are going to do with the things that we make for them. And it feels like, especially with experience and expertise, that we're going to be right, but we have no idea. Let me show you an example, okay? This is a simple example, right? This is an intersection in Massachusetts in the United States. Now imagine that it's your job to make this intersection safer. You're the product person, you're the designer that's supposed to make this intersection safer, right? And you'll notice here that there is a right turn arrow on the street and that people are turning left. And so you might say, look, I know what's going to fix this. I'm going to install street signs. I'm going to install a stop sign and a no left turn sign. And that should do it, because people will stop and not turn left, right? Well, turns out there's a good chance you're going to be wrong. The drivers in Massachusetts are insistent that they're going to go right through this intersection and turn left, even though your product worked as designed, right? The stop sign was red, it had white lettering, the no left turn sign said no left turn in English, which is good for the United States, and still, people did whatever they wanted to, right? The outcome was not what we expected it to be. Output is the stuff that we make, but it does not necessarily predict outcomes, right? There's nothing wrong with the signs here. They meet specifications, but they didn't work. They didn't change human behavior in the way that we expected. And this is a very simple example, right? Software systems are complex and unpredictable, much, much more difficult. And the obstacles that we throw in the way of our users, right, also don't stop our humans from doing what it is they want to do, because humans, like I showed you in that clip right there and in this photo, are also complex and unpredictable and stubborn. They will do what they want to do based on their cultural norms, their behavioral norms, or whatever it is they want to do, right? And even if we get lucky, right, even if we figure out our users' behavior, it's not static, right? It evolves and it changes. It's a moving target. It moves over time. So just when we think we understand our users, they change how they do things, right? And these new behaviors that we see, they emerge through the use of the systems that we build, right? Things that we never predicted would happen in our systems. Now, sometimes those things teach us how to make our products better, right? So for example, right, this is Instagram. Instagram is the place where you go and you post that one perfect picture of the day. In this particular case, this girl went to the beach. Someone took her photo. She cropped out everything, including that shirtless guy on the left. And she put that beautiful snapshot of her on Instagram, right? The other guy doesn't make it. Instagram noticed that something was happening on their service. There's this concept of Finsta. Finsta is fake Instagrams. And these are private accounts, usually run by teenage girls. I have 2 teenage daughters. They each have at least 3 or 4 Finsta accounts for each of them, right? These are private communities of friends where they can take a ridiculous picture and write on it and then share it with their friends where nobody else can see it. Or where, again, it doesn't go out as the public, the nice photo that they share with everybody. Instagram never predicted this behavior. They watched it emerge in their system. They watched it emerge outside of their system with Snapchat stories. They brought it in-house and have made it one of the most successful features of Instagram, which is in Instagram stories, and they continue to make it better, right? Now, we can use the ability to learn continuously to make our users more successful, like you saw there in Instagram, which is what they're actually trying to do. But sometimes the improvements that we make to our product, even though they may seem trivial, end up creating unintended consequences. And this is right where we start to think about, where we have to start to be critical about the outcomes that we're optimizing for, right? So Twitter's a really interesting example for all of this because, right, a lot of the features that we see in Twitter today have emerged from the use of the system, right? So hashtags emerged from the use of the system. And Twitter supported that and embraced that. @replies, retweets, all of those things came out of the use of the system. Twitter never invented those things, and they embraced that, and they made things better. But all of those hashtags and all of those retweets and @replies started to create a toxic environment in Twitter, so much so that on a regular basis now we're seeing the CEOs of these companies get pulled in front of governments to describe why these communities have become such toxic places in many cases, right? Because the outcomes that Twitter was looking for are number of users, number of tweets per day, number of tweets per users, and all of these features help that, but then created these environments that are particularly toxic, right? And so we get the leaders of these organizations trying to figure this out, right? And trying to understand how to make the system better, right? So this is Jack Dorsey, And what he says here, right, he goes, hey, we built this thing, but we didn't fully predict or understand the real world negative consequences. So we built it, we hoped it would work, and all of a sudden, all this negative stuff started happening because we're optimizing for engagement. And optimizing for engagement actually got them the mobs, the doxing, the trolls, right? All of those all of that negative engagement drove that, right? And this is Jack trying to engage the community, right? And he's saying, look, we didn't build a systemic framework to help encourage more healthy debate, but we're going to work fast to learn and share the ongoing conversation, right? We're going to try to figure out how to make this better. They're still trying to figure it out. And then Twitter gave him the kind of response that he deserved, right? This is the Twitter community getting back to him and saying, really, like, come on, man, like, this is what you created, right? This is a monster. And so the takeaway here is that building our products and optimizing them for outcomes is a terrific way to build customer-centric products that meet their needs and make them successful. But doing that blindly, without consideration for real-world implications, is at best risky, and at worst, it's criminal. And I want to show you a bunch of examples about what I mean that hopefully will get you thinking about what you're optimizing for and whether or not those are the right metrics, or where the constraints are on optimizing for those outcomes. So, for example, right, let's talk about them in the name of engagement. And of course, like the biggest player in the room here is Facebook, right? And the measures of success, the outcomes for Facebook, are what they call MAU and DAU, monthly active users and daily active users. Everything is focused on getting users engaged on a daily basis. Anything that hooks you and keeps you engaged and keeps you clicking and sharing and liking and talking to others, right? And we've seen that a lot lately with hate speech on there. But Facebook has actually been a part, the platform has been implicated as an enabling environment for the proliferation of human rights abuses, right? In Myanmar, right, people were using it to target the Rohingya minorities in Myanmar to drive ethnic cleansing in that country. And Facebook was seeing this engagement that people were ratting on their neighbors, like, oh, there's one over there, or there's one over there, there's a group over there, and they were encouraging this, right? And the platform was literally being used to drive violence against this minority population in Myanmar, right? They have over 18 million users in Myanmar, and for them, Facebook is the internet, and they were seeing daily active users, and they were engaging this, right? We've seen Facebook again and again and again fail to curb lies from politicians, right? In fact, they are being very, very specific that they are going to allow lying from politicians, right? Because it drives clicks and it drives engagement, right? At what point do you draw the line on optimizing for those metrics? YouTube is the same thing. They optimize for engagement, time on site, number of videos viewed. And so if you watch one video, they're going to serve up a whole bunch of other stuff for you that's very similar to that, right? The algorithm optimizes for the number of videos watched, which means that if you're a young man, especially a young white man in the United States, and you go down, you start watching one sort of violent video or something, a hate video, right? They're going to serve you up another one and another one and another one, and YouTube becomes the radicalization engine. Now that's engagement, people are watching, but to what end, right? When do we draw the line on engagement, MAU and DAU, right? Something to think about. Sales, very, very important to a lot of us and a lot of our businesses, right? And in the name of sales, the kind of outcomes that we optimize for to drive sales can cause relationship stress. There is a a fascinating story about how Target, the American department store, figured out through analytics and usage patterns that a teenage girl in high school was pregnant before her family figured it out. And they began to send her advertisements on the site and in the mail for pregnancy products. She had not told her parents that she was pregnant. They found out because Target was sending them ads for pregnancy products. She had to tell them. right? Someone had to write the code to capture all that data. Someone had to write the code to analyze all that data and then create the advertising and send it, because that's going to drive sales, right? And we don't think about the unintended negative real world consequences here. A lot of the products that we build drive efficiency, right? We want to build efficiency into the processes, right? Well, guess what? If you get too efficient, you start to potentially discriminate, right? Amazon wrote an AI to help process applications for jobs, right? The biases of the software engineers who wrote the algorithms are baked into that product. And that algorithm, because look, they get so many CVs, right? They want to weed through the ones that aren't qualified and get to the ones that are qualified. But the algorithm that was written here reflected the biases of the engineers who wrote it, and it penalized resumes that included the words women's chess club captain, anything that said women's volleyball team, that type of thing. And it downgraded graduates of all women's colleges, right? And so, again, we're writing these programs and we think these are really great products and we're optimizing for the efficiency of the recruiters, but at the same time, we're weeding out qualified people because the biases are in there as well. The same thing is true here in this particular one. There's artificial intelligence that's now being used in video job interviews, right? The algorithms select the best applicants by assessing their performances in videos against 25,000 other pieces of facial recognition. But guess what? Again, inevitably, this technology has biases built into it. And so while we're trying to get more efficient and get better hires, right, the outcomes that we're optimizing for have unintended negative real world consequences. Convenience. Everything we build makes, a lot of the stuff that we build makes life more convenient, like automating your home, right? Unlocking your home, turning off and on the lights, turning on the air conditioning and the heat and so forth. But we don't think about the edge cases where people will use this technology to hurt each other. Couples break up and they move out of each other's apartments. And there are stories after stories after stories of usually it's the male partner using the automated home technology to then abuse their ex-partner by turning off the lights or turning the heat all the way up or turning the AC all the way down, turning on the cameras and monitoring things. Again, we're getting usage, we're getting convenience, but at what cost? And then the final example, right, is news, really, like getting the news out there and getting people to watch and engage in the news. It really elevates, like, the worst in all of us to positions of power, which we can see the negative real world consequences there, right? Look, and it's not just social media or retail. Those are easy to pick on. A lot of industries are using software to change the behaviors of their users, right? And that's very, very important, right? And so the thing that as we start to optimize for outcomes, which is the right thing to do, right? We want to see customers behave differently in a positive way. The thing that we have to keep asking ourselves is, as we optimize for these outcomes, is, are we solving the needs of our users or are we exploiting the needs of our users? Because both of these things will make you money as a business. It's a question of which business you want to be in. Now, in a lot of cases, you could argue that this is a leadership issue, right? Ellen Pao said this in Wired. She said, look, these Silicon Valley, especially Silicon Valley CEOs, they're not incentivized to take care of their users. They're incentivized for clicks, for click-throughs, for engagement, that type of thing. I would argue that, yes, this is a leadership issue, but all of us who work in a position where we impact and design and build products have this responsibility as well to raise our hand when we see this. In my work, I work a ton with product managers and I work a ton with designers, and there's a couple of things that I come across, and these are some things that I want you to keep an eye on as we work to build customer-centric teams that are focused on outcomes. There are still some patterns that I see that I want you to keep in mind to help keep us away from some of those negative real-world consequences I just shared with you. I hear this all the time, particularly from software developers, right? I trust my product manager, right? They did the work, right? So I'm gonna build and design whatever they told me to, right? There's risk there. And if you find yourself building or designing something that you don't believe is in the best interest of your customer or your user, you have to challenge your product manager. You have to raise your hand and say, look, I don't think this is the right thing to do, right? I hear this a lot as well. I just want to write code, right? So I don't want to think about customers. I don't want to think about users. I just want to, or I just want to design or whatever it is, right? You don't have that luxury anymore. The pace with which we can deliver technology, the impact, the adoption rate, the influence we can have on the world, on our users is too great. You don't have the luxury to just write code. You have to understand the impact that code and that work is actually happening. And as my friend Kenneth likes to say, he said, look, the new technologies that we put out there, the products, the services that we put out there today, bear the ethical fingerprints of you, of the people who make those products, not of wider society, right? So whoever made the product, those ethical fingerprints are there. And so the guardrails, the constraints, the pieces that you put in to block the negative real world consequences, those are up to you, right? It's your biases that end up in the code and in those designs. And the question really becomes, what will your code be used to do? You have to keep asking yourself that, and you have to take an interest in the strategic implications and uses of the products that you make. Because guess what? When things get tough and governments crack down, you know who's going to jail in these situations? It's not going to be the CEOs that are going to jail. It's going to be people like this guy. This is James Liang. He's a software engineer. He wrote the code for Volkswagen that cheated the emissions scanning machines, the diesel emissions scandal. This guy wrote the code for that. What did he think they were going to do with the system he was building and designing, right? This is the guy in jail. The CEO of Volkswagen is not in jail right now, right? And so keep that in mind. Always ask those questions. And there's a way to think about this that really brings this together nicely. And I learned this from my friend Kim Goodwin. Kim Goodwin says, as we work together to build customer-centric products and services, we should be goal-driven, but values-guided and measure both. Goals are the outcomes that we're targeting. They are the metrics that we're measuring, the success of the product. Values are the things we are not willing to sacrifice to hit the goal. So we're goal-driven, values-guided. If we start to sacrifice some of those values, we've got to raise our hands. And so to wrap this up, the question becomes, well, what can you do, right? There's a few things that you can do immediately. Number one is understanding your business model, right? Understand how your company works, how it makes money, and where your part of that puzzle fits in, right? How the work that you do impacts the overall. And if you don't know, ask. Take an interest in your customers if you don't already do that, right? Not everybody does that, right? Talk to your customers, understand them, learn the main case, and learn the edge cases. Use the software to learn. Remember, we live in this continuous world. The faster you get ideas out there, the faster you learn whether or not you're delivering something of value or potentially hurting someone. Use those measurements to understand the impact of your work, right? How are we impacting customers beyond that? And assess that on a regular basis. Actively discuss, as product managers, this is in your hands, right? Discuss the dangerous edge cases. How are we going to prevent people from abusing each other with this tool? How are we going to prevent people from taking advantage of this tool, creating a negative environment? And then ultimately, you have the power to refuse the work that harms people, right? If you're doing work that you believe harms people, you've got the power to stand up and say, I'm not going to do that, right? It's good to be in technology. You can step back and say, I'm not going to do that work. And if you have to, you can leave and you can go to somebody else. And so I'll wrap this up with this quote here. Jurassic Park always has the best quotes for all of the presentations, right? They had it all along, right? Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. And I want you to stop. I know you can build and design anything you want. The question I want you to ask yourselves on a regular basis is, should we be doing this? Right? And if the answer is no, you should stop. Thank you very much for listening, and I'd be thrilled to take your questions now.
Thanks a lot, Jeff.
My pleasure.
So that was quite rushed to a quite important topic.
Yeah.
And for those of you on the live stream, we will keep that for a second. Usually we have a delay between now and what the people see. So head over to menti.com, use the code stated there, and raise your questions, vote for questions. We already have 5 questions. 3 are very technology focused, I would say, but maybe we can guide it into an outcome versus output focused direction. So let me pull up the first question. It has the highest votes, and it states, as technology taking over the world, do all leaders need to learn coding and technology? Which technology skills are important in today's AI-driven world, and how non-tech leaders should upskill themselves? And maybe rephrasing that a little bit. So based on what we've heard so far, and having that focus on outcomes instead of outputs, first of all, do I really have to have a technology background to make decisions based on the outcomes versus the outputs? Maybe that should be a direction we can lead that into.
Okay. So I think that if you're the leader of an organization today and you don't understand technology, you shouldn't be the leader of that organization. Now, understand technology is a very loose phrase. I think that you need to, I don't necessarily believe that you need to know how to code, but I do think that you need to understand what code is, how technology works, what the implications are, what the benefits and the capabilities are, what the risks and the challenges are. Like understanding, look, I don't write code, okay? But I know how technology works. I understand how the web gets served up. I understand how apps work. I understand the capabilities and the potential for a lot of this stuff. I think that that's the bare minimum that you need to understand. I think the more intelligently that you can speak about technology and understand it as a leader, the better you can speak to some of these challenges, right? Because I could very easily see, the leader of a traditional business like a bank or an insurance company demand certain results, but without a true understanding of how technology is changing the way that people are consuming banking products, insurance products, whatever it is, their requests may be the wrong requests these days, and that's going to cause a lot of friction inside their organization. And so I believe it's really, really important to understand the potential, the limits, and the benefits of technology and how it works, right? So if you don't know what artificial intelligence is or machine learning, you should get smart about it. If you're a non-tech leader, there's no such thing as a non-tech leader. Like, there can't be a non-tech leader today. I just don't think that's possible, because the only way to operate any kind of business of scale or business that desires to scale today is with technology. So you really have to understand how you deploy your value proposition using tech. And so I think that's the bare minimum level of understanding is, how it works, how things get from one place to another, the limits, the capabilities, the benefits, the risks. So you can speak intelligently about it, like what's the difference, like what is DevOps, right? What is continuous deployment? Like those are basics that every leader needs to understand.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Sorry, Thomas, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to recommend the book that as Jeff just mentioned it in passing. If you want to learn about AI and machine learning, the latest book from John Maeda called How to Speak Machine is brilliant in that. I just recently read that and it opened up the whole world to me. So just wanted to add that as a quick call out.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And I fully agree with what you've said, Jeff. I think not a deep dive is important, but understanding the course concepts and starting with that to really make decisions based on that is so important, especially nowadays. I mean, you came up with the Tesla example. I think the car itself is more and more in the background, and the technology, speaking about software, is more and more important, and is something that people make decisions on whether they buy this car or that car. So it's no longer really the engine in some cases, or the basic stuff that a car brings with, but it's more and more the technology and software portion of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that one was covered as well, right?
Yeah, I think we can. Good question. How do you measure outcomes? I think there is a similar question, but we go forth with that one.
Outcomes are measurable changes in customer behavior. That's the answer. So measure the behavior of your customers. How do you measure it? Analytics, instrument all your software. That's it. That's how you do it. You put analytics in your products, and then you look at what people are doing in your products. You talk to them as well to understand why they're doing it. But fundamentally, it's things like if you were to map out the user journey of your product, right? Step 1, I come to the homepage. Step 2, I sign in. Step 3, I create an account. Step 4, I search for something. Step 5, I go to the product page. Step 6, I add it to my cart. Step 7, I pay for it, etc. Right? Each one of those things is an outcome. It's a customer. It's a user behavior in your system. You should be measuring all of those things, so you have a sense of what people are doing, how much, where they're dropping out of the process. And then when you start to see problems in the behaviors, like, okay, people are coming in, they're creating an account, they're adding something to the cart, but they don't check out, right? There's a big drop off there. That's when you go and do qualitative interviews to understand why they're doing that. But you measure outcomes by instrumenting your software with analytics products, and then you run reports on a daily basis to understand what people are doing. So it's kind of a really big question, but it's also a really small question. Unless there's more detail around it, that's how you measure outcomes.
One tiny thing that actually helped me understand it, and actually learned it in a course that I was lucky enough to attend with you, Jeff, and Jeff Patton in Berlin, was the business impact mapping, where you could then level up towards like this sort of leveling from the customer behavior changes and the customer interaction that you can measure, like the conversion to the next step, and where do people drop off, and then how do you sort of build it up into more like a metrics mountain, so to say, that then rolls up into the actual part that business leaders usually care about. That really helped me understand how do you, because usually you tend to think of outcomes as a bit more higher level goals in a sense, right? So if you have something like that as an outcome, then you could sort of map it up in that sense. That helped me understand how to measure that better.
Yeah, and so the exercise that Thomas is referring to, you can see it on my blog. If you go to jeffgothelf.com and you search for, there's an article called Execs Care About Revenue. How do we get them to care about outcomes? And if you search for that, you'll find the exercise that we did there. But it's a visualization of, customer does this, which then leads them to doing this, which then leads them to doing this, which then leads to sales, right? So we're looking for all the customer behaviors, the outcomes that drive impact, right? The level of business health.
Great. Thanks for that. So I think we can mark that as answered. So next question, do you see differences in dealing with outcomes or the whole topic in the B2B realm versus B2C?
Yeah, so that's, look, it's interesting. I get this question a lot, and I struggle with it a little bit, only because people think that somehow B2B is different in the sense that there isn't a human at the other end of that sale that's going to have to use your product or service, right? Inevitably there's going to be a human at the end of that product, of that sale, that's going to have to use the product that you're building. The reality, though, is that the human that's using it is not the human that's choosing it, right? And I think that's the fundamental difference. And so as you're thinking about outcomes, right, in a B2B world, there are the outcomes of the person that you're selling to that you care about. And then there are the outcomes of the actual users of the product that you should also care about. And so you've got to kind of follow the chain a little bit further in a B2B world to make sure that you're not just selling to the buyer at the company, but that the employees of that company are now more successful, they're more efficient, they're saving money, they're doing whatever it is, or the customers of that company are now more successful in some way, because it's that data, right, the end user data, that's going to help you sell more to the buyer of the next company. And that's the fundamental difference. There's outcomes in both of these cases, B2B or B2C. It's just that there's usually a couple of different players in the chain there of outcomes as you're measuring them. So that's really the fundamental difference. But let's not forget that there are humans in every part of that process in B2B, right? You're not selling software to a company. You're selling that software to a person. And that person is then going to deploy that software to other people, right? And so all of those people behave in different ways once they get that software. And those are the outcomes that you want to measure and focus on.
Okay, thanks a lot. So maybe one question that just came to my mind: how do you measure outcomes from, I would say, the buying center or the decider versus the one that is using the software? Because there are many manual steps on the buying side nowadays, or not fully automated. So I would say, so also based on my experience, it is kind of hard to measure compared to having a fully digital product where you really have that customer journey and you can analyze more deeply.
Yeah, and look, I mean, so there's, you can ask them, so you can get a little bit of self-reported data. You can do customer interviews to get a sense of how frequently they do a particular task. So there are ways to get some insight. I mean, it might not be perfect, right? But you'll get something out of it.
Yeah, interviews, that came to my mind immediately when I raised that question. But yeah, it's still a good approach to at least get a sense on the outcome side.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
So one more question, and I think a lot of people have some kind of these questions in their head these days. Scrum and a lot of agile frameworks stress working close together in one space. Will we see some new framework for the remote world, or how will agile such as Scrum adapt to the new world? In case there's a new world.
Yeah. Great question. I believe that we have the tools and the technology today to replicate close proximity collaboration in a distributed fashion. Is it exactly the same? No, it's not exactly the same, but there's an opportunity to do that. We've got the tools, we've got the technology, and it's going to get better, right? And so the tools that we have today are literally replicating exactly what's happening in the physical world. I think what we're going to see in a year from now, I think it's going to take that long and not longer, is a level of innovation in these tools that's going to finally really take advantage of the digital space to enable even better and more interesting and different types of collaboration. So I don't think Agile's going away. I don't think Scrum's going away. I think that the tools that we use to facilitate these processes, most of them are already in place. Most organizations use Jira, they use Slack, they use Trello, they use GitHub, etc. Right? So we've those tools are already being used. The fundamental difference is that I'm not sitting next to you anymore. But there's nothing that stops us. I mean, I work on a team of consultants right now that on a fairly regular basis, we've got a Zoom chat open, and everybody's connected to it, and they're just sort of on it when they want to be on it. They're off it when they want to be off it. So if you need somebody and they're there, you just speak to them like they're next door. It kind of opens kind of a window to their office. So there are ways to get around this. That I don't think we're limited by the distributed reality that we're facing now. So, will Scrum evolve? Yes. Will it evolve because of COVID-19? Maybe a little bit faster than it did before. But I think fundamentally the principles of short cycle time, quick feedback loops, high levels of collaboration, I think those things remain intact. You might have to be a bit more prescriptive, right, about the daily schedule, right? Whereas if we're in an office together, I might see you in the lunchroom and be like, hey, let's sit down and chat, right? So I may have to be a bit more prescriptive and say, let's meet for lunch today and talk about that thing, right? Beyond that, I don't know. I don't see this fundamentally impacting Agile or Scrum in a negative way, because we're able to communicate in real time, we're able to share in real time, we're able to sketch together in real time, to write together. I don't think it's an issue.
What was your positive hack these days in the remote work?
What's my favorite hack?
Exactly, yes.
What's my favorite hack? That's a good question. The team that I work with right now on a daily basis, we do a asynchronous virtual stand-up every day. So there's a bot that fires every morning at 9 a.m. and it sends a message to all of us and it says, hey folks, what are you working on today? And then over the next hour or so, the team starts to chime in with what they're up to today. And then eventually we end up meeting during the day. And I've actually found that I've tried to replace that with Trello. It didn't work. I found it to be really helpful to be prompted every day by, it's a bot, right? It's not a human that says, hey, what are you working on? And then, especially once the first person replies, there's a bit of peer pressure to be the next person that replies. And that's my favorite hack so far.
Thanks for sharing.
Yep.
Okay, we can mark that is answered. So maybe
let's do the waterfall one. I'd be curious to learn about it. How do you get a waterfall organization to start caring about outcomes over outputs?
That's not the question that's on the screen, but I like your question better, Thomas.
Okay.
I had another very short answer for the question on the screen, and that's with a long stick. That's how I handle waterfall.
Or run away. Is that the other one?
Yeah, exactly. I go the other way. How do you get waterfall organizations to care about outcomes? It's really difficult. It's difficult because it's risky, and it's a fundamentally different way of managing the company. It really is. It affects everything. And so if it affects everything, The change is huge. If the change is huge, it's a lot of risk. If it's a lot of risk, people are going to avoid it. So then how do we get through that? We get through that by reducing the scope of the risk. So if you, let's say the company is 1,000 people, right, which is a large but not massive company, okay? If I came to the CEO of that company, I said, listen, on Monday, everybody changes the way they work. Everybody changes the way that we measure success. Everything changes in the way that we pay people and incentivize them. He'd fire me, right? It's not going to happen, right? It's too much risk. Okay, well then, how do you reduce the risk? Okay, give me 5 people. Don't give me 1,000, right? Give me 5 people and let me task them. Let me give them work to do. Let me frame the work for them in a way that encourages them to do product discovery and to look for outcomes. Give me those 5 people dedicated to this experiment. It's a process experiment. Give me that experiment for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that. But give me that time box where those 5 people are dedicated to figuring out this new way of working inside our organization. What I've done there is I've reduced the risk from 1,000 people working this way, this new way forever, to 5 people working in this new way for 6 weeks. In theory, that should be a significantly more, a friendlier suggestion or a friendlier request to that organization. Now, what you've essentially done there is you've built an experiment, right? It's a process experiment. And so you need to set the terms of success, the measures of success for that experiment. And even more importantly, you've got to take that small team and you have to make sure that that team is radically transparent about everything that they are doing. The worst thing that you can do is take that 5-person experiment and stick them in a conference room somewhere for 6 weeks where everybody forgets about them. Because they'll come out in 6 weeks and be like, we did it, we're agile and we're customer centric and we're design thinking, and everybody will be like, no, you're not. Right? Like, I don't get it. So if you take that same team and you put them in a public space in the office, you make sure that they are communicating weekly to stakeholders and to the organization. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we're learning. Based on that learning, here's how we're changing course. And making sure that everybody's aware of that they see them working differently, that they see their work. If you're in the office, you put it up on the walls. If you're in a virtual situation, you share it publicly. And that team is doing demos. And they're doing, like, they're sending emails or whatever, that they're communicating proactively about what they're doing. Then at the end of that 6-week experiment, there won't be any surprises, because the whole company and the stakeholders have followed the progress of the experiment over the course of the 6 weeks. Now, at the end of that 6 weeks, you take the evidence that you've collected, right? The team is happier, more productive, they delivered product to market faster, they talked to customers, etc., right? You can take that evidence and say, look, this worked really well for this team, so let's keep them going for another 6 weeks, and now give me a second team. And if that works, give me 5 teams, and then 15, and then we scale, and then we get into the more challenging parts, right? So that's part of the challenge here, is to get those, run that experiment, get a small win, and then use the evidence to ask for more and more and more over time. That's the way to do it and to scale it.
I was in companies, well, I've seen companies, and I was in companies both ways, where they tried it exactly this way, and I also saw that it wasn't working in a good way because of the fact that the 5 people needed to change their mind as well, and there was nobody who helped them to change the mindset. What would you prefer?
I mean, look, if the evidence that you collect doesn't change the mindset, you could try again, you know. But at some point, you might have to say, look, this organization is just not going to get it, and I'm gonna move on somewhere else if it's that big of a problem. And look, most organizations don't do this well, and they don't get this right. So it's just a question of like how wrong you're willing to tolerate, right? And so that's the challenge. But in many ways, you could be the team that leads the change, that begins the transformation. You just have to have an organization that's willing to try, and that's not always easy.
Exactly. Yeah. Thomas is always saying, "Change the company or change the company." So some way.
I like it.
Yeah, or love it, change it or leave it into the same direction. And there is definitely a lot of truth in that. What you were also stating, I like that approach of setting up a small team and really being quite transparent and showing what is possible with modern ways of working and modern frameworks, to really have a really good example and to spread the word. I mean, like you said, if you do that in your small little room and you just come out with a result and don't be transparent on the process side, I think it's hard to convince people to really follow the same path.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, so with regards to the time, I think we're gonna close the session here. I mean, what should I say? Thanks a lot. Thanks for your time. Thanks for sharing your experiences, thoughts with us, especially during the Q&A session. And yeah, Thomas, Alida, anything to add?
No, just a big thank you. Thanks for taking the time out of the busy day to share.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. This was fun. And look, I recognize I've given that talk a few times, and I recognize that there's a lot of heavy stuff in there, and it doesn't usually generate a lot of questions. But I do hope, because I don't know what kind of questions you would ask about that kind of stuff. But so I'm glad for the questions that we got, and I appreciate them. So I want to say thank you for that. But definitely really think about like what you're doing at work and what you're helping to, what you're contributing to. I think we really have a tremendous. I think we have a real opportunity. I think there's the collective consciousness of the world right now is really pushing towards more of doing the right thing in tough situations. And so I think if you find yourself there, I think you've got a real opportunity. I think you'll find yourself highly supported as well if you're worried about that. So anyway, that's what I hope you take away from that.
Yeah, thanks a lot again, and also a big thank you to our community. Thanks for the questions you raised, and thanks for being with us tonight. If you want to speak at one of our product tanks, please approach us. It can also be quite a short talk about a book, about a story, about a success story based on an achievement that you had in your company. And approach us, either Thomas, Alida, or myself, primarily on LinkedIn. Write us, and we try to bring you into the product tank and support you with speaking to the community. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
And sorry, Nico, I think we did you prepare like a form, a Google form that you want to share? I was just thinking, do you want to put that in there?
Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, so we prepared a Google form, and we will send that out quite soon, hopefully, collecting topics. And again, approach us in the meantime, or wait for the Google form to collect possible talks and speakers for our product tank. Thanks, Thomas, for mentioning it was a pretty long day. And enjoy the rest of your day, and see you soon.
Okay. Thanks, folks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.